Hi, I'm Kate McKenzie and I'm the CEO of Chorus in New Zealand. So I guess as we've just discussed, we've got the fibre rollout to 70% of New Zealand and we've got a target to get to 87% by 2022, and we're on track and we're pretty confident we're going to get there on time and on budget. Look, I think plenty of challenges in terms of getting there. The one thing that's been great and really helpful, I think, is stable public policy settings supported by multiple governments over that period of time from when it was first commenced. That's really important because these are long time horizon infrastructure projects. You don't want the rules of the game to be changing constantly when you're sort of halfway through the process. We've certainly had some challenges from a regulatory perspective. We did have a big dip back when the regulator decided to drop copper prices, and that had an impact on the revenues, and if we didn't have enough revenue we couldn't attract the private funding to fund the fibre build out. Once that was corrected, that's been sort of pretty good, and more it's utility style infrastructure investors that are interested in our stock, and they see the long-term benefits of building out a fibre network, even if it's quite expensive from a capital perspective in the near term. Look, I think with a bit of public policy work, we could maybe get to 90%. We tried really hard to get to 90% in the last round. Some of that will be up to the government because the last few rounds of this have been tender processes where the government decides how much money they're willing to put forward, and we have a look at the overall economics of that and see if we can make a case for it. As you get more and more remote, it gets tougher and tougher to make a case, but I think there's probably still a few more percentage points of fibre coverage that we could go after. Well, as I said in my speech, Ruatoria, which is one of the towns that we're rolling out in now, it only has 100 lines and 300 people. If those places are quite remote from other bigger population centres, it just costs a lot of money because you have lots of civil works and not many people to defray the cost over. That definitely gets challenging. We use a lot of electricity lines and our own pole infrastructure out in those places. If there's long distances, sometimes that's more effective, but it's just really tough to find good economics. When you get to half a person per kilometre, that's tough to get full fibre to. I think culture is incredibly important. We all hear a lot about how culture, more important than strategy, and I'm certainly an advocate of that because I think keeping people sort of thinking about the future, keeping ourselves agile, keeping ourselves customer focused. If you don't have those elements to your culture and you become too much of an old, stodgy, no change resistant kind of environment, then it'll be really tough to make these models sustainable. So we put a lot of work into making sure that we're thinking about what's new, what's different, what else can we improve, how else can we keep ourselves on our toes. It's good to have a bit of competition out there in the market to just keep you focused, and I think creating that culture is incredibly important. Yeah, so I think now tech exports grown 8% in the last year. It's the third biggest driver of export dollars after farming and tourism. And if this keeps on going, I think there's no reason why it can't start nudging up towards number 2. I think it's also really good for regional development because it sort of reduces the tyranny of distance. You can start your small business anywhere you like pretty much in New Zealand, and with good fibre infrastructure you can communicate with the rest of the world, and it's really reducing that tyranny of distance argument, which is great for the economy. Well, as I mentioned, we are working with some of the IP streaming guys to say, does broadcast technology eventually all run over the fibre network as we move towards 4K TV? Can we be, especially for over-the-top streaming services, a better distribution path than using satellite and other forms of technology? We're definitely thinking about that. We're looking at Wi-Fi and the role that Wi-Fi might play as we get more Wi-Fi enabled devices attached to people's homes. We've had a bit of a look at IoT like everybody else, although those business models are very challenging. And I think, longer term, things like virtual reality and augmented reality, they're going to drive bandwidth demand. So making sure we're ready for some of those things and getting our timing right, going to keep us busy and occupied and entertained for quite some years to come.